Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Organissima, New York.
Folks, if you're joining us, this is hurricaneh. You're watching the iHealth channel. This is our monthly live Q&A with Dr. Heim, world-renowned, definitely a psychiatrist that everybody needs to know about and get to learn from. And, great questions, great answers. So stay tuned. Here it comes. There he is. Hello, doctor.
Hi, Hurricane. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. How you been? It's been a month.
Fantastic. It's been a fantastic month. Yes. How's yours been?
Awesome. Can't complain. Just doing my thing here at the station, doing stuff at work. It's just having fun. That's it.
That's good. That's good.
One day at a time. We are actually live as the feed is, but this is the fun part about the show, and hopefully we're gonna have a few calls and we have a few questions. So I'm excited. Audiences are excited, and how things over the other side of the hemisphere.
Hurricane, things are warming up here. And I mean that literally, because we're heading into summer and we're having some of those hot days that we all actually love. How are things where you are?
It's the opposite. It's getting chilly, windy, rainy, you name it. So it's gloomy right there. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I cannot always, I have to always ask that question. It's just like weird because it's the other side of the world. And
it's amazing, isn't it? We live in an amazing world, Hurricane. Absolutely amazing.
And it is a beautiful world, and we want to keep it that way. We want to help people stay that way, happy, healthy, well, the whole works. That's right. Hey, listen, this is everybody's time to get the questions in. And I do have a few questions that came to us, and we can start with those while we expect a few other calls to come on. Are you ready?
Let's go straight into it, Hurricane. I'm ready.
Alrighty then. So I have a multiple question here from Jennifer. She's from Connecticut. And so this is going to be a little bit on the love side. So the first part of the question says, what is love and how does it work psychologically? Is there an actual psychological definition? That's the part one. We can do that, and then I can go to the next one, or we can just as the whole
yeah. Okay, no, give me the whole question, Hurricane. I want to see where we're going here.
Okay, perfect. So I'm assuming this is what led to that first part. So why some married folks stay in a relationship that is abusive, oppressive, unhealthy. A colleague is not happy in her marriage. Her husband is very protective and possessive. She can't do anything with him. She doesn't hang out. He calls her a lot at work, requests FaceTime. When he tells her when she, when we tell her to leave, when he tells her to leave, she says that she can't. He is good to her. She is not seeing him for what he is. And I think that's really what it is. I think she's talking about her friend who's got issues.
Okay, yeah. Haven't we all got issues with love, Hurricane? And it's amazing because love is one of those things that we love talking about, we love to experience, and we'd love to get it right if we possibly can. But I suppose the bottom line answer to what is love, because that's the big question, is we do not fully understand love. However, we've got some ideas, and we've got some scientific ideas, we've got some psychological ideas, and we've got some social ideas. So I'm going to put sort of all of those together. From a scientific point of view, love serves survival. Our brain is there so that we can survive this harsh environment called life. And love is felt in our limbic system of our brain. And what love does is it does three things. It helps us first to get together, to have kids, all right? Because if we don't do that, then the species will die out. It helps us get together to actually parent our children so that they will actually survive to become adults. And then the third thing that love does scientifically is that it starts building structures in our society. So a couple in love become part of a structure. And that structure then becomes part of larger structures because other people are in these sort of structures. And the love between all of us in society helps us survive together. Now, I know it doesn't feel that way sometimes, right? Scientifically, we can talk about how love is driven by certain brain chemicals. Like, for example, when you first meet somebody, there's sort of a lust that happens there, and that's driven by sex hormones, right? But then sometimes you may find yourself attracted to one particular person, and you might say, you know what, that person is for me. And there's a lot more pleasure in that, so there's a lot more dopamine released in the brain. Mind you, we start not to be able to think quite straight, okay? And some of that is mediated by lower serotonin. But when you have love, long-term attachment, as we call it in psychiatry, then what happens is we become under the influence of oxytocin. And oxytocin is just a powerful chemical in the brain. When you make love with somebody that you're in love with, that love that gets released is mediated by oxytocin in the brain. The love that mothers have for their infants is mediated by oxytocin. All love and all trust has this oxytocin element. So if we don't get that feeling, we don't feel complete as human beings. Now, I'm just up to the scientific point of view of love, okay? So if there's anything you want to add to this.
No, it's pretty good stuff. And you know, I mean, for our audiences, we all experience love one way or the other. And there's different types of love, I'm assuming. You know, there's love for a partner, family, kids, friends, world, nature. There's so many things. But I guess the word is just a term that can be many, many things.
Oh, well, it can. And Hurricane, as you know, I've just written a book called The 7 Types of Love, where I talk about erotic love, friendship love, family love, love for strangers, love for mentors, and there's a few other loves that I haven't sort of talked about there. But, you know, Hurricane, we don't want to just survive in this world. We also want to thrive as individuals. So the psychological part of love is that, you know what, if I can make it together with somebody else, I become more than myself. I become part of a relationship that is not only a framework, but also an expression of something higher, something better, if you like. And a good relationship, if it has any meaning to people out there, can actually help two people to become better. And socially, love is something that gets expressed through all of our relationships to a small degree. So in this huge thing called love that we don't understand fully, but we all enjoy immensely, and we all get wrong sometime, it's worth putting the effort to try to get it right. Because if you can, it feels absolutely amazing.
And I would concur to that.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you experience it with your spouse, you experience it with your family, you experience it with your parents and your kids, you know, with your friends, you know, even with live and everybody else. I mean, it's just amazing. But again, I think that sometimes it comes with challenges, and in our case here in this particular question, I think it led to, you know, well, the source of the question was really the experience of the friend of our guest here. So
and Jennifer was talking about her friend, you know, and why do some people remain in abusive relationships?
Yes.
Now, problems in a relationship does not mean that the relationship is abusive, because in love, and your experience is Hurricane, we all have to be able to tolerate, accept, and even forgive each other's faults. Otherwise, a relationship just won't go forward. But how far do you take that? When does it become abusive? Well, for that, we've got the law. And the law basically says you start hitting another person, right? That is abusive. And there are other forms of abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, financial and emotional abuse. But love is so complex. And I work in my office with a lot of people that have stayed in abusive relationships because the love instinct in us is so strong, Hurricane, that we want something to work. And even in an abusive relationship, there is actually love, right? But too many things go wrong. And when they can't be sorted through, when a person becomes endangered rather than accepted and actually encouraged, then in those situations, it's actually better for everybody that the relationship ends. However, we all need to work on our relationships to get that feeling of love flowing, because it isn't easy.
Well, true, doctor. And again, just from gathering from the question and just in general, I think the problem, and I've seen this actually happen in my, not personal life, but around me. So I've seen those types of relationships, and I can tell you, it is, as you said, it's still love. The problem is one party has excessive love, and I guess one has maybe less, and that's not met in the middle. And I think that's what pushes. And when someone sees that they're not getting exactly the same amount or equal, balance here, they just start to, I guess, to just try to find other ways to prove themselves, or at least, hold that person with them. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, most definitely. What I'm going to do is put names to some of the things that you've been saying there, because love is something that we experience in the brain as a strong force that goes outwards as an attraction towards somebody else. Okay. But to have a good relationship, we need an equal power balance, right? If somebody is elevating themselves in power, and people normally do that out of fear, by the way, right? Then the other person is going to get suppressed. And that's an awful situation. So to balance the passion of love, which is that strong attractiveness that we have, and I'm talking about a personal relationship, there has to be respect love. And respect love is sort of being able to say, I want to be with you, but I see that you are a separate person that has your separate needs. And I am here to fulfill those needs, just as I want my needs fulfilled by you. And so passion needs to be balanced by respect. Because if you're in a two-person relationship, your job is to love that person the way that they need to be loved. Now, their job is to love you the way that you need to be loved, all right? That's what makes it really
meet halfway.
Well, yeah. Or I should think 100% both ways. That's when people.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's a better. Well, it's funny because I was watching a series just last week on Netflix, and it's called Made, and it's about it's a cute story, and it's about a success story that's going to evolve eventually, but it started with an abusive relationship, and and it's almost like was generation based, and so there's a whole content there about it, but it's amazing because you're right, it's sometimes people don't see it when it gets to that point and they want to make it work and it's just not happening. I mean, in this case, at least from the question, I mean, sometimes it gets to the extreme where you can't even have freedom, and you feel like almost obligated to. You can't be anywhere without checking in. I mean, that's a little bit too. that's right. That's crazy. I always use the word crazy here, but
no, that's all right. And to start a dialogue as to look, I'm not getting what I need. I like that you love me passionately, but I need respect. I need you to see that I am a separate person, right? Because we all, as human beings, have the capability of hurting other human beings. But what should happen is that we respect other human beings because we don't want to be hurt, right? None of us want to be hurt. But that is an impetus then for us to try to not hurt another person. So talking helps, right? But it gets very, very complex.
Well, it is. And again, it depends on many factors. And, sometimes it's the background of each individual can have an impact. We talked about this in previous shows where, if you had some sort of a childhood trauma, whatever, that can affect your, if you've seen something or you've been exposed to it as a kid, as I had stated on the case of this particular series, something of that happened in that particular scenario. But those are all factors. But to your point, at the end of the day, I think for Jennifer's satisfaction, it's people have to work it out or make a decision that it's not going to be healthy and just it has to end. Doesn't mean to end ugly.
Yeah, no, well, yeah. But you see, we wanted to stay together. That's actually the thing, because love fulfills so much in each other. But if it's getting ugly, then we've got to look at it. And look, Hurricane, I go into this in detail in my book. I've got to say, I look at how to have love-based conversations and how to mutually get this balance between passion and respect in a two-person relationship. But I just want to talk about something that you brought up, how we get influenced by what has happened in our childhood, okay? Because the brain really does have two modes in a sense. We have a conscious brain network where we think and we make decisions, and that's in our frontal lobe, and particularly in our orbital frontal cortex, where we can think and decide, this is what I want, this is what I need to do, and all of that. But you see, that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to be in that mode of thinking. So what we normally do is we go on automatic pilot. And for want of a better word, this is actually what happens in the subconscious mind, right? Where we just live out the patterns that are implanted in our brain. And we have patterns mainly from our childhood, mainly from what society expects us to do. And sometimes we haven't examined these patterns, but if we don't think about it, we will just blindly go with these patterns. And the idea is, in a relationship, to think about what's actually happening in the relationship, to tear it apart and say, okay, this is what needs to be done. All of that takes a lot of work, but the idea is to create a new pattern that you can then give to the subconscious mind to say, here's a better pattern to work by, right? And that's a truckload of work, Hurricane. I don't want to say that's easy, but that's basically what happens in couples therapy. We look for a new, better pattern for us to work on when we're on automatic pilot. Otherwise, we'll just reproduce some of the abuse that happened in childhood.
Wow.
That was a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's pretty long questions.
Yeah.
But I have just the book that's available, I'm assuming, for people to acquire if they need,
Yeah, that's you can get that through our website. You can get that through Amazon. I believe there's an audiobook a lot on there. I'm into audiobooks these days. Okay, I just love being read to by people, and this one's by my spouse, who has a wonderful voice, and it's a good way to look at the book. But yeah, we get to some of these big things.
We have a call. Hold on. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. We got some feedback here.
Nice.
Hello.
Hurricane H.
Hi. Welcome to the show. Who do I have here?
You have Scott and Pia.
Well, hello,
Hi.
Scott. Hello, Pia. How are you? And you have hurricaneh. And if you're watching, you're with Dr. Heim live. So you probably caught out the first part of the show. So let's see what we have today. What kind of question do you have for Dr. Heim?
Well, we were mostly calling in because we just wanted to speak about the relationship between OCD and anxiety, particularly pertaining to teenagers, and how we can help them cope with that.
Yeah.
Doctor?
Peter, that's a wonderful question. Thank you very much. So younger people are getting a lot more anxious these days. In fact, there's a leading researcher by the name of Jean Twenge, who's basically calling this the age of anxiety. And OCD is, well, it's actually a complicated mental illness, but it has a strong connection with anxiety. And it's got to do with control issues. The thing about today's society, particularly for younger people, is there's so much uncertainty, there's so much change, there's so much choice that this makes people anxious. What makes us all actually relaxed is familiarity. The brain loves familiarity. That's how we get our serotonin boosts, all right? By feeling familiar, by being with people that are familiar, by being in a familiar environment. And look, our present day society has gone through so much change that this familiarity is lacking. Plus, screen technologies also mean that we're getting new information, new ideas, new images all the time. So that's kind of the cause. So the way to help people with anxiety and OCD, firstly, is if it's severe, you may need to get professional help. So sorry, Scott and Peter, I just got to sort of always say something like that. But the other thing is to have familiarity, rhythm and routine. And if you can start off just with something like a meal that everybody has at night, or some sort of weekend activity that everybody does, or the Saturday morning where the whole household is just chill, that starts to bring familiarity and routine. Does that speak to your situation at all, Peter?
Yes, it does actually. It was kind of like a second part question. So this stems from a situation where our son was diagnosed with PANDAS when he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And we kind of went through the motions for about a year and a half or so. This was about 11 years ago. So I believe everything was a little bit different then. I believe there's treatments for it now. I also believe that it's been the term's been changed to PANS now.
Yeah.
So we had an issue where he was treated for about a year and a half and everything went great. And then once the teen years approached, we noticed, I guess, with the shift in hormones that everything just came back all at once. He started to develop tics.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of the stuff we went through that kind of ended around the age of 8 kind of came back at like 13 into 14.
Yeah.
So, the OCD came back, the anxiety came back, and it was kind of like we're just going through the motions again now. So it's a little exhausting, but he's at a point where he's understanding it a little bit better,
So how old is he,
so
Peter?
unfamiliar with it because he was too young to even realize what was happening before.
How old is he now, Peter?
He's going to be 16.
Okay. So he'll be understanding. And did he actually have some sort of a streptococcal infection when he was younger?
He did. We were unaware of it because up until this day, he doesn't show symptoms of strep. So every time he is under the weather, we do have to have a strep test done.
Okay. So your son is in one of those situations of a complex OCD syndrome because it's associated with infection, and there's something very biological about OCD that we do not quite understand. And all the things that I said beforehand, that's all psychological, right? Whereas what your child has gone through is much more biological, okay? But there's a strong association. There's that idea that he would like to have, or what would help him is to have familiarity and control and some understanding. And above all, that this is not his fault, all right? That this came from a biological condition that doctors are just beginning to understand. Is he still under the care of a doctor for his situation?
Yes, he sees a behavioral therapist, but I was just wondering at this point, as he enters his later teen years, at what point do we possibly shift? Because he does understand. His behavioral therapist does help him a lot.
Yes.
But he still tics, he still taps, he still gets anxious.
Yeah. And so at 16, and look, as a parent myself, Peter, I find that my idea of my children is always a few years behind the reality, all right? I have a son who's 26 and I'm convinced he's still 18, all right? So during these years, your son is going to transition to being a full responsible adult. And so what actually helps is for you to facilitate him becoming in control of his illness and in control of managing his illness so that he can understand it. And we've got the information out there to start that. And for him to start taking more responsibility, and I'm sure you're doing this, for his relationship with his behavioral therapist, and also that dissatisfaction that, you know what, this hasn't gone away yet. And that's a horrible feeling. For him to sort of drive, son, do you want to go see a doctor again? Is it time for us to see another psychiatrist? Is it time to sort of look at those sort of things so that he feels more in control of himself? Because this is something he's been battling with for almost 10 years now.
Correct. this is what I was just wondering, like, when do we cross that line? As we're watching him basically become a man, and he's still going through the motions, and you know, he's understanding of what's happening. It's just, you know, I guess he just kind of wants it to go away just as much as we all do. But at this point, I think it's kind of sticking around with him for a while.
Yeah. So something that helps is to give the illness a name. You could call it something like PANDA. All right, is PANDA bothering you at the moment? All right, so that it separates it from him, so that he sees that it's not his fault. But what's going to happen in 2 years' time, when he's 18, healthcare professionals are going to start dealing with him exclusively and almost cut you out of the loop. Now, you never stop being a parent. I understand that. But for him to get the feeling that he's not to blame, but it's his responsibility to have his emotional needs and his medical needs met in the way that he needs to, while you're still on his side. That's a transition for the next 2 years.
Right, and that's understandable, and I'm totally okay with that. And I even told him that even now, we're lucky with the therapist he has. She's within walking distance of our house. She's accessible 24/7 to him. It's just, I think we're at a really funny little space right now, because he is getting older. He is doing everything he's being told to do, but yet he's still dealing with the effects of the PANDAS. You know, he was diagnosed with symmetrical OCD, which was good. So he had an actual diagnosis. But, you know.
Okay, and just for people listening, PANDAS is a situation where things like OCD and tics is associated with infections. So it's very biological. It's not just anxiety based, right? So what I would suggest at this stage, Peter, is that you have almost weekly meetings with him where you basically say, okay, how can we help manage this? All right, what do you need? So it becomes like a project, and it becomes something outside of him, so that he feels he's got dialogue, because your role is always going to be mother and father. You're always going to have that role in his life. But as the project gets put into his lap, you've just got to facilitate that so he feels in control and getting his medical and emotional needs met.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
So a weekly meeting is actually a good idea, right? Just so that he can feel that he can say whatever he needs, and he knows that you will listen, and you'll need to say a few things too, knowing that he will listen as well, you know? And that way you're on the same side of the project, all right? You're on the same side, helping each other overcome a common problem.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. That is really helpful. And I think it's great for me to take that back to him. It's great to have another perspective. Like I said, I feel like, you know, there's a fine line now as he's getting older, you know, where he's going to have to make some decisions as well as us.
Peter, thanks very much for your question, and all the best, and always keep in contact with a therapist and a doctor if you need it.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, guys. Bye now. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Love the show. Thank you, Hurricane H.
Thanks, Scotty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Wow. That is pretty intense. And thank you for clarifying. I mean, I think that's pretty helpful. And even people watching with a similar case, they probably can take that advice right there. I mean, that's important.
Oh, yeah. And Hurricane, it lets us know just how tough some people are doing it out there. I mean, okay, so this would have started off with some sort of infection, normally a throat infection, when their son was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then the throat infection, doctors tell you the throat infection's gone. But all of a sudden you get these behaviors, you get these jerky movements, and they just keep going and going for years and years. Now, nobody actually wants that in life. But when there's not a cure, what do? You manage it as best you can while still looking for the answer and a way to move forward. And that is difficult, particularly at this age when their son is Yeah, becoming a man, and you know what? Wants to find his way in life, just like we all do, Hurricane.
First of all, this is the first time I've actually heard that it could be affected through biological background. I mean, it started, because like most of the psychology thing, I thought it was more like just mental stuff. But I mean, coming from an actual physical infection that can, have this impact, I think it's the first time for me. I don't know if for so many people listening right now, they're probably going to be like, wow.
Yeah, and that's a strange thing with OCD. And look, I've treated people who have very, very severe OCD, and it's quite debilitating, Hurricane.
I can just imagine. And for Scott and Pia, I mean, that's a lot of years to endure, and you got to do the best you can as parents, and it's certainly not a good position.
Parents, yeah,
you're in it for a long time. Yeah. So listen, we give them all the strength, and wish them all the best, to continue, and hopefully this gets better and better over time. And by the way, speaking of that, I mean, in experience, does that get better over time with the right treatment and things, and eventually dissipate, or it just you have to manage it?
Yeah. Okay. So rather than there being a rule for everybody, my clinical experience has been that it's variable for people. I know children who have had this around aged 8, just like Peter's son, and they've had an OCD condition for a year or two, and it's gone. I've known some people for whom it's come back, and I've known other people who, particularly at the age of development, between 18 and 22, when we're all going through some very strange experiences, you can have just a few things happen that just tilts it in the wrong direction, right? So it's very variable, Hurricane, but I would always encourage people to be involved with the doctor and the therapist. It's going to help them make a difference in their lives.
Well, doctor, as always, thank you for really getting deep on that and sharing with us. And to your point, every case is different, and there's different factors also that may impact how that outcome or prognosis will take place. So again, for everybody listening, if you experience similarities, I mean, this is a good place. I mean, there's a good feedback here, and obviously, if you're dealing with a particular therapist, I think you should be able to see what the next steps are. So that I'm sorry, you wanted to say something, Doctor?
No, I just want to use OCD as an example of, see, there seems to be a lot of debate in people's minds. Should we go psychotherapy or should we go medication? And again, it's not an either or question, because OCD is a situation in which the illness responds beautifully to a lot of our medications. Okay, so I have treated some people who have had horrible obsessions and compulsions, and one medication has just turned their lives around. But that's not the case for everybody. For somebody else, it may be you need to look at a psychological intervention, change behaviors, think about what's happening and what you're feeling and how you act in certain situations, and that can help. So a lot of these debates in the public become either or, but mental illness isn't an either or debate. It really is very individual. And so trying to find one size to fit everybody is just not going to work.
Agreed. And I definitely. Well, it's one thing that we've asked, I think, a few sessions back was about the medication, because I think there was a question that came out before. People sometimes are afraid of getting into the medication process, and how addictive it can be. I think sometimes that's something that people have to also consider, right? And in this case, there might be a need for it, and sometimes you don't have no choice if you really want to get better. And you just gave an example where it does help and turns things around. So
okay, so let me talk about that word addictive, all right? Because whenever we hear that word addictive, it's sort of like it's all bad and we should stay away from it, right? The most addictive substances we have at the moment are cigarette smoking, crack cocaine, heroin, and amphetamines. Okay, they're highly addictive. More addictive than medications is actually the internet technology. All right, all the little beeps that we get from our iPhones, okay, from the screen, that is highly addictive. But you don't see people afraid of it, all right? People still sort of want to have that in their lives, so they will manage that. Less addictive is actually the medications that we use in psychiatry. So the medications that we use, particularly for anxiety and depression, on the level of addictive, we look at smoking and crack cocaine and amphetamines and even the internet as a lot more addictive than something like our medications, all right? So, you know, I won't say that not all addictions are bad, but we have this moral panic when it comes to medications. Now, I've got to contradict what I just said there, because we are going through an opioid crisis. Opioids, unfortunately, are addictive because they work, because they can actually get you out of pain, but that then diminishes in effectiveness over time, and you can end up in a situation where you're on a medication that is dangerous for your life. And that is very difficult. We have to start moving through all of that and finding some ways forward. But when it comes to SSRIs and our medication for depression and anxiety, that's kind of low-level addiction compared to some of the other addictions that we still have to get on top of in our society.
Doctor, I love that comparison, and putting it in perspective is important, because to your point, we all think, oh my God, it's bad, right? But you're right, there are much different addictions in this world, and some are seriously worse. And,
yeah,
you know, and it's all about how to manage it and the frequency. And, you know, I think that the most fear that people would have is like, can I be weeded out of it? Can I literally be eventually out of this medication?
Yeah.
Is this going to be a lifetime thing? I think that's really the main concern.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so just on that, and if we talk about anxiety and depression, taking a medication is always risks versus benefits, right? And what we aim to do is trust the medical industry that they're helping us by making the right decisions there. But everything is a trial. So let's say when I start somebody who has a severe depression on a medication, it's always a trial, which means that I might say, for you, I would like you to commit to taking this medication for a year or for 6 months. I tend not to go less than 6 months, but we're always looking at risks and benefits. If it helps you feel good, if it saves your life, as a lot of medications do, we stay on the medication. If things are getting better and we've got some understanding as to what led to this depression or anxiety, then we can start tapering off the medication. The thing is, it's got to do with working on the management of your own mental illness. And the more that you're willing to put in that work, the more ability is there to talk to a professional to say, you know, I think I can handle this. Can we start going down in medication? And as long as you're involved with somebody, you can come down in medication. And as a psychiatrist, I often find myself reducing somebody's medication rather than starting somebody's medication, as long as I give people tools that they can use that are more effective than the medication. And when we do that, we're hitting a sweet spot.
Well, Doctor, as I'm hearing you, and I'm thinking about something else that came to mind here is, it seems that all cases, in any case of a mental situation or diagnosis, there's different, obviously, protocols. But yes, my question really is, does it end ever for someone, medication or not, you know, or is there I mean, it seems that it has to be a commitment for a longer time than the 6 months of the treatment period, because you still have to manage it, I guess, over time, right? It's almost like you have to continuously make sure that, you know, there's nothing that's off, because it gets better, but maybe triggers later on can happen. I think something like that may be occurring in our minds right now as we listen to this.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So as a general rule, the more severe the mental illness is, the longer time it will take, right? But I do get people that in a matter of months get over whatever their complaint was. Everybody goes to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a doctor because they are suffering in some way and they want that suffering to stop. Well, as a psychiatrist, I have to tell you, the number of people that I have seen once or twice and I've not seen them again is actually quite high. Now, that's usually because they get better, right? So the people that I see for a long period of time, and because I I specialize in personal trauma. That is people that obviously have more severe illness. With those people, you work for years. But even in that, there are people with whom you work just for a year or two, and they are actually, by definition, better. But again, I then don't see them anymore, right? Sometimes I'll see somebody who hasn't seen me for 5 or 10 years, and they said, this will sort of come up and they'll see me again. And I have a number of people that will see me on a regular basis because they don't want to take the risk of anything going wrong. They'll just sort of chat to me about their life, knowing that I understand their whole background, just to keep them on track. And that's actually really good use of my time as well. So Hurricane, within all of that, there's a whole gamut. But if you're suffering, rather than be afraid that this may be a lifetime thing, take a chance that there's somebody out there that actually can help you in your situation. Because you know what? We actually want people to get well. We want to give you the best therapy, whatever that happens to be, psychological or medical, to get you out of a stuck situation as quickly as possible.
And Doctor, thank you, because you know what? I mean, as I'm listening, hold on a second. Sorry. All right. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for calling. This is hurricaneh. How are you?
I'm all right. I have a question, if it's possible.
Sure. This is the platform. Go for it. Who are we speaking with, by the way?
I'm Adam from Boston.
Hey, Adam. How you doing? So what's your question for Dr. Heim today?
Yeah. I have a question. Actually, it's very serious questions for me. And because this is the topic of the conversations today, actually, I want to ask the doctor, what I can do when I'm flying, because when I'm flying, I'm very scared and I want to get over of it. So what is the options, how we can handle this, and maybe any treatment so I can get it?
Okay, so if I get the question, Doctor, you got the question, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So Adam from Boston, as far as I can understand your situation, Adam, is you have a fear of flying and you want to get over that fear of flying. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So the good news is that is something that responds very, very well to a psychological intervention. Okay. So Adam, I would encourage you to find a psychologist who can hear what contributed to your fear of flying and can put together a treatment plan for you that will get you over your fear of flying. Now, that would take about an hour for a psychologist to hear you, get to know you, and then find a treatment plan just for you. But Adam, I got to let you know that you've touched upon something that I used to have and my brother used to have, because when we were teenagers, we had a really dangerous flying trip and we both ended up with a fear of flying. And my brother actually got over it by doing a flying course, a fear of flying course with our airline, Qantas. And they end up showing how safe the airlines are, take you for a flight and work with you. And he is over his fear of flying. Whereas I use what's called a CBT technique, where they look at your thinking around the fear of flying. And what actually helped me was finding out that there is more chance of being kicked to death by a donkey than dying in a plane accident, right? So Adam, quite seriously, all that I do is before I get on a plane, I look around and see if I can see a donkey. And if I don't see a donkey, then I tell myself, this flight's going to be pretty good. Now, neither of those may work for you, Adam, and I'm not making fun of your fear of flying. This is seriously what happened to me and my brother, all right? But what I do want to let you know is you do have hope. You will most likely get better, depending on the cause of your fear of flying and the psychologist that you work with. You should be able to come up with a psychological process that will take you maybe 3 to 6 months. And if you're able to work on it, I would be very confident that we should be able to get through your fear of flying. So go for it, Adam. Does that help you at all?
Okay, all right. But in the meantime, for example, if I have to fly in the near future, and does exist any short treatment or maybe any some medications which can put down all of this stress during the flight?
Okay, yes, there does. There does exist medication that can help you, but I would encourage you to understand what you're going through and find psychological techniques, because what happens is the medications will work in the short term, but in the long term, you want to feel empowered as a person that understands what's going on in your mind and that can says, you know what, I'm on top of this and I feel good. You feel a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, all right? You start to feel I can conquer a few things in life. So in the short term, if you've got to take some flights, then your doctor may be able to help you with that. But I can't guarantee you that because they need to know your particular situation. But for the long term, I'd encourage you to find a psychologist that can help you through your particular situation.
All right, Adam. Well,
okay, all right. So thank you very much for your answer, and I hope I'm going to work in this situation. So
yeah,
I hope everything will be fine.
Yeah, it will. And if you're able to put in the effort and practice whatever they tell you to, these are scientifically validated techniques. They work for me, and it's not as simple as just looking for a donkey. All right, it's a lot more. There's a lot more behind that. But that would take me a couple of hours to take you through that. But a psychologist can do that for you, Adam, all right? And it's worthwhile. You will feel like a better person at the end of that process. And I wish you all the best with it, okay?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, doctor. Thank you for your advice and for your explanations. Thank you very much.
Okay, all the best. Take care.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for calling. Bye now.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye.
And Hurricane, you encourage people like Adam to call us up in 6 months' time and let us know how they went.
Oh, well, Adam, you hear the doctor. Call us back again in a couple of months and let's see how, after the next flight, if things are going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
I'll be in touch.
Thank you, Adam. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, doctors. So actually, I wanted to just jump on that one quickly because it's amazing. I think a lot of people, have that fear somehow. And I didn't have that fear for a long time. I was like always comfortable. I flew a lot of times all over the world. But, more recently, I personally started almost having an anxiety before I got on the plane. And I know it's probably the safest, transportation means that exist today, safer than being in a car or anything. I love to cruise. There's probably a good chance just as bad in a cruise,
That's right.
You're in the middle of the ocean. So I actually got over it somehow. I mean, I do kind of almost like have anticipation, but then I just think about it and like, you know what? Listen, I'm one of millions flying today. I mean, literally millions all over the world. We do hear about accidents and, but that can happen anywhere. You can walk out of the steps and fall. I mean, I was on my skateboard and I fell. So, it's crazy.
It's actually very interesting. And I'm glad that you said that most people do have a fear of flying, because that's actually true. And people don't want to admit it because they think they're the only ones that have a fear. But all of life is actually this balance between thinking and feeling. And you need to have a balance, because if we let our feelings get in control, then fear can just sort of take over. And what helped me was to get my thinking self to sort of know all these things, not only about the donkey, but if you look at the statistics of air safety, I think it was in the mid-90s that it became all of a sudden so safe that there were half the amount of accidents and fatalities. It's amazingly safe. But here's the thing, just knowing the statistics is not enough, because we are not just thinking people, we are feeling people as well. And that's what makes for a good experience of life. We like those feelings, but to get in there and understand our feelings takes a bit of work. And psychologists in particular are skilled at being able to give us a vocabulary to think about our feelings. So we get that balance between thinking and feeling. And that can give you a winning combination for your brain.
Thank you, Doc. By the way, I'm going to share this. I mean, this happened to me. You probably remember the Concorde flight in Paris that, that had a crash. I actually flew that same week to Paris right after that. And it was still in the news. We were reading about it, watching it in the news, and I was still in the air. And it took some determination, you know what? And while in the air, you just have to ignore the idea, you're good. And what I started doing personally is to read a little bit about flight. And I enjoy it. I watch documentaries and stuff. And the more I did that, the more I learned that actually planes want to fly. They can glide for hours even, I mean, unless there is a catastrophic, something that's bad happening, they have a lot of training to actually manage that. Now, of course, accidents can happen, but if we think about that, this is how I look at things personally. If I think about that all the time, I cannot live my life.
Yes.
So I have to enjoy my life and hope that everything's going to be always peachy. But like I said, I can get in my car, and I've seen myself, missing accidents on the road more than I can count on my hands right now. And so it's just, and I've had actually some rough flights. I mean, I remember a flight coming from Turkey. It was almost 11 hours in turbulence. I mean, it was nonstop, and it didn't help that the captain of the plane was actually saying, "Well, we've tried up, we've tried down, we've slowed down the plane. All the other aircrafts are on the same path, and there's nothing we can do." It was just a big storm, and believe me, it was 10 hours of literally just like moving. It was not fun. Yeah, so it happens, and but I don't think that I can still do it. I would do once I get in, it's done. I just put my music, watch my movie, walk about, eat, and that's it. So, I mean, there are ways to deal with it personally, but you're right. I mean, if you can't figure it out, you have to seek the assistance and the help to get you better. Because I mean, it is the fastest way to travel.
It is. And as you mentioned, Hurricane, living life takes a bit of trust every moment, because something can go wrong every moment. And trust in the brain is mediated by oxytocin. And that's the same thing that mediates love. So we get back to what Jennifer was talking about in the very first question. What is love? What is trust? It is this feeling of comfort with not only people, but with life. And it's very difficult in a world of a whole lot of change where anything can happen. And this idea that the world is a random place actually doesn't help us. If we concentrate on the familiarity of life, like if I drop a ball, it'll fall to the floor. And you know what? Every time I do that, I can have confidence that that's a familiar thing. Already just watching that gives us trust. Now let's go to aeroplanes. How many aeroplanes take off and land every day? All right. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And that familiarity of an airplane going up and going down safely so many times in so many countries over the whole world can give us a bit of trust. Mm-hmm. And that trust in life is connected somehow to the love that we have for each other as people in the brain.
I have to love the way you did that. I mean, we started with the show with love, and you're connected. That's awesome. I mean, hey, what do I expect, right? you're good at what you do. So.
I enjoy it a lot, Hurricane, too.
I know. Well, listen, I mean, it's amazing because you had that, for example, in the case of the fear, you had that when you were younger, and being who you are today. I mean, you cure people, you help people, and it's awesome because you've experienced, and that's not, some people will tell, well, what do you know about this? Because people always challenge, well, you didn't experience this, you can tell me all the good stuff, but wait until you're on the plane and feel that. Well, you can say, I've been there. I had a similar, like a drowning, for example. I've almost drowned one time. I was stuck at sea, and for 2 hours, I was literally lifted by a helicopter. True story. Yeah. So, but the next day, the guy that helped me actually from the guards, he actually came back and we went swimming in the same spot. And and basically to overcome the fear immediately, because if I had hesitated and not gone up, maybe I would have never been able to go back at sea. And so there are ways, to manage some of these things. But you're right. It's a matter of, if you can't do it on your own, seek the help that you need.
Yeah.
Simple. And that leads me to earlier, because before the call came in with Adam, there was something I was going to say. When you talked about the longevity of the cure, or of like the therapy or the treatment, and how long it will last, that's like medical as well. I mean, if you have a diagnosis in your body for anything, I mean, you just don't leave it alone. I mean, you monitor. If it's gone, it's gone. But you want to keep checking. That's what we do our physicals, right?
That's right.
Once you identify there's an issue, I mean, it happened once, it could happen again. So you have to monitor and remove yourself from anything that can trigger that diagnosis again.
Yes.
So, you know.
And sometimes we talk about all the bad news that is out there. And the studies actually show that in mental illness, we now have such good treatment that you can actually go and expect to get better. Just like if you break a bone, you have an operation, it will get better. Just like if you have high blood pressure, somebody gives you a medication, it will get better. Like the rest of medicine, psychiatry is advancing. So you can actually expect to do well. And sometimes it sounds like doom and gloom out there, but most people actually get better.
And that's exactly what we want. Is we want everybody to be better, happy, living well, and that's really the ultimate goal. And again, you know, you are contributing to that, because I think just for a show like this, people are listening to some advice that they can apply, and at least guidance for how they can deal with some situations. And I mean, I want to thank also the folks that are calling in and sending their questions, because while they're individual questions, I think they'll apply to many more people that have similar experiences. Yes.
And so we've had somebody like Adam from Boston, and I am saying that that anybody in Adam's situation can expect to get better, okay? Because there are good treatments out there. And it's not just medication, because medication only works in the short term, but it's in psychological techniques where you understand your thinking and your feeling, and you actually become a better person. You get better at managing your own emotions. And yet then there's Peter and Scott, whose son has been in a situation for a long time, and that's a situation that is able to be managed rather than cured. But yet I would still say, keep going, keep trying, find that cure if it exists. If not, you find the best management that you can, because we want their son to have the best possible life that he can have.
Yes, sir. And yeah, we wish them the best. And definitely, again, the invitation is open to call back in a couple months or whatever, and just to keep us posted on the outcome and how things are progressing. That would be great. And again, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Scott, Pia, for calling in and sharing. Again, sometimes these are personal things, and I have to give people, credit for the courage to actually come on and ask, because
it does take courage.
A lot of you and I, we had this discussion originally where not everybody is willing to actually ask a psychiatrist.
That's right.
It's amazing, but we have this platform. You don't even have to say your name, just send us your information. And as a matter of fact, you can send your emails to hurricaneh@ihealthradiousa.com, and I'll collect those. And then this is a recurring show every month, so the last Friday of the month at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and I guess 11 in Australia.
That's right.
on Saturday. So just stay tuned for that. And you can also call in to the station, while we're live on the radio, and the number is 8484828052. I memorized it that way. It's a lot easier.
No, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, so doctor, we're at the top of the hour here. So I want to thank you for being with us. And, as always, thank you for all the advice and guidance here. And folks, thank you for watching, tuning in, and for basically participating as well, for those folks that called and sent their questions. And we will be seeing you, talking to you at the next time with Dr. Heim, which is basically Climb to Your Prime with Dr. Heim.
Fantastic.
So that will be I guess November, the last Friday of November, I would say. So stay tuned for that. And that's it. Bye now. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye, Hurricane. I'll see you next month.
Thank you, doctor. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.